Hi guys, Jane here, and I am going to talk about a thing I call a complex outline. Um, if you saw my video on plotting, I said that if you have your plot points, your character backgrounds, and your setting, you don't necessarily have to plan any further. A lot of people can successfully take that information, depending on how much of a pantser or plotter you are. A lot of people can take those bits of information and just go with it and write their story. I basically use those bits of information as a simple outline with a little bit more fleshing out. So I might say, here's all the stuff I know happens in the story, and then just call it a day. So if you don't want to do a complex outline before NaNoWriMo, that's fine. But if you are a really hardcore plotter or want to be, then I recommend this step. And this step is also helpful if you have to just plot out one or two scenes. That's what I use it for if I get stuck along the way. And basically, this is looking at the very, very nitty-gritty specifics of the scene you're about to write or the scene in a story. I have a friend who is a massive, massive plotter, and she has a spreadsheet basically with this is the chapter, these are the scenes in the chapter, and then the information about these scenes. So you can go that extreme if you want, and that will really help if you're doing NaNoWriMo because you literally will have everything you need. Again, the point of plotting before NaNoWriMo is because when you're trying to get 50,000 words in a month, you don't have a lot of time to make story decisions along the way. You can't spend an hour daydreaming and trying to figure out how your characters solve the problem because then you'll have lost an hour of writing and you may not be able to make it up if you're trying to win NaNoWriMo. So let's talk about what a complex outline is if you choose to do one. And I'm not saying you should, but it can be helpful. And even if you don't now, it's good to know how to do it in case you have a complicated scene later on that you need to outline a little more strongly than the rest of the book. So the first thing you need to know is who's in the scene. What characters that you've written are going to be showing up in the scene. You want a little list, who's there. Next thing, whose point of view is the scene in? And if you're wondering what I'm looking at, I wrote a book that is not currently published, but maybe next year, Jane's Guide to Brainstorming and Outlining, and I wrote it for my creative writing group to kind of help them with understand better a lesson I was teaching. And I gave this out to all of them, and a lot of them said it was really useful. So, whose point of view the scene is in and who's there? If there's more than one person's point of view, that's a good thing to note too. That way you can know you're going to need to make some changes. If you're writing a romance, usually most scenes are going to be in both persons' point of view. If you're writing from first person point of view, of course, you're just going to have one character throughout the whole narrative. But again, these are important things to know. Is there anybody new in your scene who's going to be in need of introduction? And that's important because you know how much time you're going to have to spend bringing a character in and introducing them. If everybody in your story that is in your scene has already been there before, you don't have to do any kind of introductions. If they haven't, you do. And you need to make sure you know enough about that character to introduce them and figure out how are they related to anybody else, or how do they show up, or where are they integrated. Is it Sam's cousin? What does the reader need to know about Sam's cousin? How big of a role does Sam's cousin play in the story? So that's an important thing to know in your scene and to make note of. I have a new character appearing. What do I need to tell about them? Then also later on when you're editing, you already know which scenes everybody's in and where you intro a character. So if you have to go back and look at a description, or if you have to go back and look at what background you've given, you already know a location for that. All right, where does the scene take place? You already know who's there. Where is it? It can be something as simple as Johnny's bedroom, or it can be something as complicated as, they're in an old haunted house. Here's what I need to know about it. It's Victorian, but with updates. There's a dumbwaiter that's going to be important to the plot. There's a bar that's going to be important to the plot. Everybody's sitting on leather couches, whatever it might be. And again, this is how much or how little detail you need to get the scene going. Anything that is vital to the scene in a complex outline, I would give. So I wrote a complex outline for a scene involving a picnic, and I did like a basic layout of there's a river, people are fishing in the river. On each side of the river, there are people picnicking, there's ducks and geese, and people are paying attention to that. There's kids in the water, which is going to create a distraction for some characters later. There's a big tree that my main character is going to be leaning up against. There's no houses or anything in close distance. Everybody's brought food. There's a communal picnic basket, that kind of thing. Again, you don't need every little detail in your outline, but just what is absolutely important for putting that scene together so that you don't forget. Okay, the next thing. What happens in the scene? What is the scene about? What physically happens in the scene? Johnny and Sally talk about their future. Johnny and Sally eat a picnic and talk about Sally's mom. I mean, what happens in a real rough, this is the most important sum up of the scene. The characters go out for pizza. They learn that Tommy's dad is sick and dying. They then overdrink and go drive home and have a car accident. Nobody dies or is seriously hurt, but we're going to move into another scene where that's going to play back and be important. Whatever it is, what happens? Just, you don't have to necessarily in this section get into the meaning, but just what? The characters sleep together. The characters have their first kiss. The characters meet ghosts. Whatever it is, what happens? All right, and now, these are the important parts of the planning, because these are what you're going to focus on when you write the scene. How does the scene advance the plot? All scenes should advance plot, setting, or characters, and preferably all three. Again, that may vary depending on what kind of story you're telling, but definitely two of the three. You want some kind of depth of character, you want some kind of moving the plot along, and or exploration of setting, especially if it's like outer space or fantasy or something. How does it advance the plot? How does it enhance the setting? How does it develop the characters or change them? You want to know what your scene is trying to do. And that's kind of the point. You already said this is what the scene is. Why is it there? What's it trying to do? And if you don't have a reason for the scene, cut it. All scenes have to do something, and preferably two things, because if they don't need to be there. And I've seen writers before, and I've had this problem with clients in ghostwriting, is they want a scene that has nothing to do with the story. They just want it there because it's a cool scene. They think if they have this really cool thing happen, like they just want to see it. For ghostwriting, I do it. My clients get what they want. For my own story, if I have a scene and nothing important in that scene happens, it doesn't go in the book, because or it gets revamped so that something important happens. All scenes are important. Otherwise, you're just wasting the reader's time. And I hate reading books where I don't feel like anything's happening. I feel like we're just sitting there and nothing is moving forward. That's how you get a page turner, and that's how you get good pacing and all that, is by moving things forward, revealing a key mystery, finding out something about a character's background, revealing something about the setting, the history of the world, whatever it is, the scene should do something, and you should know what you're trying to do in the scene. And that kind of gets to the next part, which is similar to those, but a little bit different. What is the main purpose of the scene? So we've said it should advance the plot, enhance the setting, or develop the characters, or change them in some way. And we've got specific sections in our complex outline for those areas. But what is the main thing that the scene is supposed to do? Okay, you have characters who sleep together, and that is going to, bring them closer, add to the romance. Maybe she's going to get pregnant, maybe they're going to regret it, whatever. But the purpose of that scene is to change the dynamics of the characters so that we can continue on and set up the next scene. You just need to know what you're trying to do kind of all along the way in a complex outline and how your scenes connect. Are you setting up a future scene? Because you're gonna need to pay attention to that in a complex outline. If you're setting up this scene over here, you need to do certain things in the scene, and you need to be aware that you're setting things up. Also, once you have a complex outline, you can refer back to things and know where things happen, so that if you need to look at what you did or like subtle hints you might have put, you already have all that. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice a little. You already have all that written in your outline. So again, not everybody needs a complex outline. I don't use them for a whole book. I'll use them for scenes if I'm trying to struggle, or if I'm struggling a little with, I know I need something, but I'm not really sure what, or a scene's kind of falling flat. I'll do it sometimes to be like, okay, what was I trying to do? But if you are a hardcore plotter and you're really nervous about NaNoWriMo, going through and doing this for each scene on an Excel sheet is amazingly helpful. Again, if you're not a plotter, that may bother you a lot, and you may feel like you're losing some of the magic of the exploration as you write. So again, not everybody should do this, but that is how you do it, and what a scene, or what information about the scene it should contain if you want to do a really complicated plotting outline, a complex outline. So yeah, I hope this has been helpful to you. Let me know if you're a plotter or pantser or somewhere in between, how much information is too much, how much is just right. Do you use Excel sheets? Do you use notebook paper? Do you detail plot every scene? Or do you have just a vague, this is about what's going to happen? I'd love to hear kind of your way of doing things. I assume most people who are watching videos about NaNoWriMo are kind of new to the writing thing. So that's why I'm telling you how I do it, or how I've seen it done that worked. But really, as long as you have a good plan going in, and you're not going to get stuck in the saggy middle of a book, which is where most people really have trouble, you're going to be okay. The whole point of a lot of the things I've had you do is to help you get through the saggy middle. Because when you write a story, the beginning tends to be easy. You're fired up, you know where you're going, you're unveiling the characters, and especially in the first draft, you can just kind of trudge along. You're given backstory, you're given info, and it's great. And then a lot of times you get to the middle and you know the end, or you should. You should know your end. Always know your end of a story. Otherwise you don't know where you're going and how can you get there. But you know your end, but you've got so far between the beginning and the end, and you lose your way of how to get there. Even if sometimes you map it out and say, I know I need this scene and this scene and this scene, it may be hard to connect or to see what were you trying to do with those scenes. Why is that scene necessary? So always keep in your mind, this is what I need a scene to do. And then when you write it, make sure it does those things. And if you're focusing on that in the middle of your story, you should be fine, and you shouldn't get stuck and have hours of brainstorming that is taking away from the writing. If you're doing NaNoWriMo, you don't want to spend a lot of that time brainstorming. You want to spend it actually typing or writing, or however you're inputting your words. Because the brainstorming stuff should all happen, and the planning should happen now in October, or it should happen before each writing session. When I go to do a writing session at all in my everyday life, not just NaNoWriMo, I try to have already thought out the scene. What am I trying to do? What's going to change? And all the complex outline stuff I'm talking about here, I do in my head before I sit down to write, so that I'm not going and staring at a blank page going, what do I do? How do I get from here to the next plot point? I already know. I already have sat and thought about, this is the scene, this is why I'm doing it. I may not know the nitty gritty. I may not know every line of dialogue spoken between the characters. I may not know what he's wearing. I may not know what she's wearing. And yes, sometimes surprises happen, and sometimes magic happens in the scene and a character blurts out something because it just feels right, and I go with it. But I at least know going in what I'm shooting for and what needs to happen for the scene to be a success. And I think that's the best way to make sure that you can get through NaNoWriMo and not fall into the trap of getting stuck in the middle of a story and losing steam. because if you lose steam and you have a couple days where you can't get words on the paper because you don't know what you're writing, you're probably not going to finish NaNoWriMo, because with NaNoWriMo, you can get words behind, but you don't want to get days behind. So what I mean is, I can't remember how many words you have to write in a day to finish, but if you're a couple hundred short, you can make that up another day. But if you're a day short, I think it's like 1,600 words, but don't quote me. I probably could do the math. I didn't. It's like, let's say it's 1,500. It's probably not quite that, but let's say it is. Somewhere in there. If you are writing 1,000 words and you the next day have to do 2,000 to stay caught up, that's not a big deal. If you have to do 3,000 instead of the 1,500, that's going to probably be a struggle, and you're probably going to just get more and more behind. So if you're having a lot of unproductive days where you're just sitting there staring at the blank screen going, I have no idea what to write, I can't move my story forward, it's going to be a problem. At least if you have some kind of plot and the ability to have a complex outline, even if you're just outlining in your head before a scene, you're not going to stare at the blank page. You're going to say, this is what my scene needs to do. Now I just have to figure out how it's going to do it. All right, guys, I really hope this has been helpful. I'm so excited about NaNoWriMo. I hope you are too. I can't wait to hear from you about what you're writing, and if you're psyched about it too, feel free to friend me on NaNoWriMo. I'll try to update you guys on my progress in November, and I'm just really looking forward to being there for NaNoWriMo. I may do a couple more videos about Nanoprepmo, but I'm going to be kind of busy this month. So if you don't see a lot of videos from me until NaNoWriMo, once NaNoWriMo hits, I will update you on how I'm doing progress-wise. But I'm excited. I hope you are too. See you guys later. Bye.